We are here in beautiful Germany, Wangerland, Horomeersiel, and we want to do a camera comparison between the Vivo X200 Ultra versus the Vivo X200 Pro. So you can see the specs on both. You can see they have the 200 megapixel main camera sensor, and on paper it's the same sensor for the main camera, but a different lens in front. 35mm on the X200 Ultra, and the Pro only has 23mm. An ultra wide angle that is as large as the main camera sensor on the Ultra, and the Pro has a way smaller sensor here. And then we have some front-facing shooters as well that we want to try out right now. The front-facing camera of the Ultra is the only one that has 24mm here on the Ultra model in terms of focal length. What do you think about this one here? HDR is working fine, I think, and also the autofocusing system is quite nice, so we have the possibility to just focus on objects like the Pro model here. It's getting a bit loud. You can see some motorbikes passing by. Hopefully the noise cancellation of the mic is working just fine. So what do you think about this one here? Now the X200 Ultra's main video camera, which is the ultra wide, 14mm cropping in, so roughly like 15 or 16mm. So what do you think about this one here? It's looking quite nice, I think, thanks to the large sensor, but background bokeh is probably much what you don't get and expect here. Also notice eventually there's a microphone bug with the Ultra model that with the Boya Mic 2 detects the microphone too late. So I hit record and it will take a few seconds for it to detect the microphone, and then at one point it jumps over to the external mic. Otherwise it's recording with the internal mics. So this is an issue that got introduced with one of the latest camera updates. I don't know what's happening there. Hopefully they will fix it at one point, because the Pro model, as far as I can see, is not affected at all by this problem. The main camera on the Pro for video recording is the main camera also for photos, so 24mm, a bit cropped in, so it's like 25, 26-ish kind of millimeters here. This is the same sensor, but it creates a nicer background blur thanks to it being a little bit more cropped in. But you don't see so much of the nice houses that are here. But is it still enough for vlogging? Especially when you do travel vlogging, do you still see your surroundings enough, good enough? What do you think about this one here? Let's try out jumping to the ultra wide angle as well, just to have something to compete and compare. This is 15mm ultra wide angle. It's a way smaller sensor here, but it gives you roughly the same field of view that we have on the Ultra model, a little bit more cramped in, but you can see a little bit more of this beautiful surroundings here on the ultra wide angle. So what do you think about this one here? I'm not testing out the main camera sensor. Timmy not testing out the main camera sensor on the Ultra because it's way too cropped in, and even if I hold it way longer, you see it with the X Ultra, Find X8 Ultra from Oppo versus the 200 Ultra, that it doesn't make sense to do it. So what do you think about the ultra wide angle here on the Pro model? If you look at the front-facing video, it is becoming obvious that we have a bit more cropped in video for some reason on the Pro model, even though it shouldn't be so cropped in, but it's a bit more cropped in, and the Ultra model is looking a bit nicer. We have a bit more yellowish and punchy colors on the Ultra model. The Ultra model throughout the picture is a bit better there when it comes to the sharpness, because we have autofocus that helps a little bit. But both are notoriously bad for the stabilization. You can see at 4K 30, it's very shaky on both there. In comparison to all the other flagships, it's most shakiness there that we have on the front-facing cameras on both there. Both doing a fine job, however, the autofocus performance is just better because there's autofocus on the Ultra model, and I think the Ultra model in general, even though we have sometimes this HDR artifacts there, it's recovering very quickly. It's doing a slightly bit better job than the Pro model there for video. Main camera video, and I have to say I'm liking the 200 Pro a bit better. First of all, why is that the case? It's not only the background blur that we have, it is a little bit softer. Where here, the ultra-wide angle that is used on the Ultra is showing you a lot more of your surroundings, which I like, but it has some kind of action cam flair where everything is more in focus, even though it's slightly blurry there, but everything is also a little bit over-sharpened and a bit over HDR-ish looking there on the Pro model. Especially, you can see there's some noise even creeping in because it's so sharpening things up here on the foreground. I'm not sure why it's doing this. Can turn it off, of course, when using log or some other recording modes, but the Pro model is not doing this. It doesn't have to rely on this so much. It's way nicer there in this opinion, because it's like not so over sharpening everything, not so much HDR-ish going on here, where this looks a little bit over sharpened, look a little bit more overcooked basically. So if I can recommend something for video, I know you want to keep the ultra wide angle for nice ultra wide angle shots, but if you have such a large sensor that should perform a little bit better than this here, just allow us some 18mm lens instead of the 14mm lens, or have such a good cropping mechanism or some optical kind of zoom or something like this that helps. Because I think Nubia Z60 Ultra with its larger main camera's ultra wide angle sensor at 18mm creates a little bit of bokeh, background bokeh, but it's still wide enough where, here for main camera video footage, I would prefer the X200 Pro actually, even though you can see, especially for travel vlogging, this one a little bit better. So I would have to go and record in log for the X200 Ultra to be able to be 100% satisfied. Otherwise, yes, more kind of an action cam flair with autofocus that you have on the X200 Ultra. Which one do you prefer? When we zoom in, first we start with like the sensors here. You can see the difference in terms of much bluer kind of sky, a little bit like warmer colors here. The zoom in animation, however, on the Pro model looks very, very nice. You can see almost no difference that you can notice from ultra wide angle to main camera sensor, where here you can see it's slightly out of focus and then gets in focus there. The color difference again is visible. When I zoom in even further here, you will notice that both are handling this well. Now it had this weird kind of shift there with the focusing, where here on the second zoom we don't have it, but it has a slight jump there. And I try it again. You can see a slight jump still. In terms of detail levels, both are very comparable. There's not much at 85mm here, this versus this. Not much of a difference in terms of sharpness and detail levels, I think. So very, very comparable here. You zoom in a little bit more. Both are also like doing this in-sensor crop zooming very, very nicely. And you will notice not much of a difference here. This looks very nice, sharp, detailed. And the Ultra also very nice, sharp and detailed. There's a slightly bit brighter exposure here. But you will see that both are doing a very fine job there. When I zoom in a bit further, you will see also that there is a difference now, because what I can clearly see here is it's a bit softer and a bit more noise reduction applied on the Pro, where the Ultra, you can see way more noise that it keeps in, but it also means we have a little bit more of a sharper look. We don't have so much on the very soft kind of look here. Not so much noise going on, but very soft kind of look, and sometimes some details missing on the Pro model. We start off with macro shots, and we can get a bit closer with the X200 Pro and get things still in focus that I want to focus on. I did not use tap to focus here just to see what they are doing. I had to step a bit backwards on the Ultra to roughly get this area here in focus, but when you can see when I go in here, it is still back focusing a little bit there. And this not only happened here, but it also happened on this occasion here, roughly the same kind of point there, but yeah, this one is back focusing a little bit. We see already a little bit of the differences. We have a bit more bluish kind of tone on the Pro and a bit of warmer tones on the Ultra, so a bit of a yellow hue, one would say, and you can see it throughout all the pictures, even though all have been created with ZEISS natural color profile here. The detail levels on both is extraordinary good, and both are very good for macro shots. When we take a look at the main camera sensor, we have the big difference between the default focal length, 23mm on the Pro and 35 on the Ultra. Both are excellent in their sharpness and detail range, not much of a difference. The only thing that I notice is I think there's a slightly bit more sharpening and even though contrast on the Pro model. where we have a bit warmer color tone on the Ultra model. And this you can see throughout the video here. And what we can also see here is 35 millimeter cropped on the Pro versus 35 millimeter optical. Both looking very identical. Only if you zoom in, you will see the difference. It's very soft here on the Pro and it's crystal clear, sharp, even tiny bit over sharpened, I would say. You can, of course, adjust the sharpening level on the Ultra and the Pro. Here, I think maybe the Ultra would benefit from a little less sharpening. I kept it to the defaults. When I zoom out a little bit, the white balance changes a little bit on the Pro, but the sharpness and detail levels are getting back, and it's roughly at the same point that we have on the Ultra. Then we check out the telezoom lenses. Both are very identical, not much of a difference at 85 millimeter, besides the warmish kind of colors on the Ultra model, where it's a bit cooler on the Pro. But what I noticed is that we have a larger opening, larger aperture on the Ultra that should help with dark conditions, but it also introduces a little bit of problems, I think, in terms of sharpness and details. It might be also a little bit over sharpening on the Pro model, but I think I see a little bit more sharpness towards the Pro model, especially on this edge here. We can see the sign is a little bit blurry, and here it is a lot sharper on the Pro. So yes, this is something that I notice and that you will notice throughout the pictures. Here, mostly you notice the warmer colors, but when I go towards the side, you might also notice that it is a tiny bit sometimes sharper on the Pro model in comparison to the Ultra model. Otherwise, the further you zoom in, the further it becomes apparent that the Pro model also uses more artificial intelligence to sharpen things up. You can also clearly see that the optical, either the processing or the optics are a bit better on the Ultra. We can see a little bit more details here where they're a bit washed out here already at this 10x or 30 millimeter zoom. And when you go to the spikes in the background, you can see the aggressive sharpening that the Pro does here with AI, and it's not so much doing it on the Ultra model. And it becomes more apparent here, besides like the color difference where the Ultra is a little bit more accurate. The sharpness and detail levels here at 85 is almost the same. Might be even like the slightest edge that we see there on the Pro. The bokeh, very nice on both. You don't see the woman coming out of the bathroom here, which is nice. So the bokeh is not, it's the big differentiator between those two is definitely the color here, with the greens being a bit warmer. And when we see this here, we can even think that the 200 Pro is a bit sharper there. It is again the more aggressive sharpening that they apply here. At 10x, it appears at this shot a little bit better, because towards the sides here, the Ultra is always getting a bit more blurry. When we go towards the center here, you can also see that it is a bit softer, and here it's a bit aggressively more sharpened up. You can see it also there in the background where you don't have so much sharpening artifacts, where here you can see already the white lines and some steps in terms of sharpening on the Pro. But when you zoom in even further, like 345 millimeter, you can clearly see now it appears to be a lot sharper on the Pro model, but the Ultra is actually looking a bit more natural. When I go to the center here, you can see how much more processed the Pro looks in comparison to the Ultra, where the Ultra looks more like an optical zoom that reached its maximum. The Pro model is just like an art. It's a painting. It's just simply too sharp. It's too artificial looking, and I prefer the Ultra there. What do you think? And then we have the main camera sensors, 23 versus 35 millimeter. Both have roughly the same kind of very a bit aggressive sharpening applied there. The color difference again that you can clearly see here, but otherwise they're doing an excellent job for sure. The ultra wide angle is the highlight of the X200 Ultra. No one can beat it. Here it is a bit cooler all over the place, where it's a bit warmer on the Pro. The Pro has no chance against the Ultra here in terms of detail levels, not only towards the edges, but also the center. And it's just a way better camera sensor that we have on the Ultra in comparison to the Pro. You can clearly see it here. We have a bit of a haze effect going on. It's not very sharp, it's not very detailed, where the Ultra is just beating it. Colors are a bit faded there, where the Ultra is just simply ways ahead there to the Pro. The Pro is not a bad ultra-wide angle in all the flagship levels, but it's just another completely level on the Ultra model. And that's it, basically. So yeah, what we can see is main camera sensors are very, very comparable with each other. 35mm gives you a different kind of look. The ultra-wide angle is definitely a major win for the X200 Ultra, and I'm surprised how close they are with the telezoom lenses, because they're basically identical. There's a bit of more processing going on the X200 Pro, especially with the higher zoom levels, which I don't like in particular. But at 10x sometimes, and especially towards the left edge, we have a little bit of a less sharper picture of the Ultra, but it's a bit sharper on the Pro model. So this is interesting. 35mm now on the Vivo X200 Ultra. The latest update added this automatic nighttime detection, and it's directly choosing 35mm instead of the 14mm. But for the sake of it, because I want you to see me not so close up, we go to 14mm, which is the default video mode here. So what do you think about this one here? Walking towards the light here, 4K 30 frames per second, recording on the X200 Ultra. Standing under light now, and now let's go away from the light in the background there, and now I am turning towards the light and standing in the dark. So what do you think about the quality here of the X200 Ultra? And what do you think about this change that it's switching to 35mm when it's dark? And internal mics, by the way. The same main and ultra-wide camera sensor now on the X200 Pro, and this one here uses 24mm instead of, or 23mm instead of the 35mm or 40mm. So it should have nicer background blur, shouldn't be too much cropped in. Walking towards the light here, now standing under the light. What do you think about this one here? How is the flare protection here? Now the light in the background, and yeah, now walking towards the dark, turning around, facing the light and standing in the dark. Internal mics, what do you think? Stabilization, colors, which one is the winner for you? Taking a look at the night photos, we start with the ultra wide angles. We have a wider field of view on the Ultra model, and it is the better ultra wide angle, even though the lens flare is not the best there. I think both are having some flaring issues there, but I think every camera has some flaring issues there. You can decide which one is better. I think the Ultra a little bit better there. When I zoom in to 100%, you can clearly see which one is the winner. It's the Ultra for sure, the larger sensor, much more details, much more clearer, not so blurry. It's just night and day difference there. The Ultra is winning. The main camera sensor is quite interesting because we have 35 on the Ultra where we have 23 on the Pro, but they are doing very, very similar. The only difference that you will notice is it's a tiny bit crispier on the 35mm here, also in terms of detail levels, but because it's a bit more cropped in. Otherwise, the HDR is doing fantastically on both here. I think both are very readable there. We can try to compare them a little bit more side by side by cropping into the 23mm to 35mm if we want to. Or what we can also do is we just go 28mm by using the ultra wide angle on the 200 Ultra against the 23mm on the 200 Pro. But then you will see that yes, the 200 Pro is winning against the Ultra, especially at night time. At daylight, it's very comparable, but you will also see slight advantages towards the Pro model, where at nighttime it becomes very apparent that the 2x crop on the ultra wide angle on the Ultra is not winning against the 1x sensor 23mm on the Pro. Then we can go also the other way around, like I said, cropping in from the 200 Pro to 35mm. It's not helping at all. So this is just the difference here, night and day difference again. The optical zoom or the optics native 35mm is way better, way more detailed than the crop on the 200 Pro. Generally, I think the sensor doesn't like to be cropped so much, to be completely honest. Now the telezooms, very comparable at 85mm. I don't see much of a difference between those two there. Slight processing differences here. It seems to be a little bit overexposed there, this logo, where here it's a bit more processed looking. So it's a bit thinner looking there. They're adding some white lines and making it a little bit sharper there. The rest here is very comparable with each other. I think even like the colors, it's a bit darker reddish here on the Ultra for some reason, where it should be a bit lighter reddish like we have it here on the Pro. So it might be a slight edge there for the Pro in terms of this color. Otherwise, lens flare differences, I think that's a bit more prone to flaring on the Pro than on the Ultra, but it's very much identical. And the more you zoom in, the more it becomes apparent that they're very, very both equal. At 10x here, or 230 millimeters, you can clearly see a little bit more flaring now, maybe on the Ultra model in comparison to the Pro model, but the detail levels are basically on par, maybe slightly bit better, but it's a bit more overexposed and a bit more bluish here, where it should be more warmish kind of color that we see here. So the text is a bit thinner there. It looks a bit less processed, where here's a bit more processing going on. The same you can see here. The sharpening levels are a bit higher here, but it's just nitpicking at this level where I would say they are identical. And the same goes for like 345 millimeters. They're both very, very good. One of the best that you can get on the market right now. And the differences are just, you can see here and make out what you want to make out of it. But in my ranking, probably they will end up with the same points because I don't see much of a difference. It's a bit of color difference, a bit more bluish kind of color, but we have like also a setting that says night sky blue on the X200 Ultra. We don't have on the X200 Pro. On the X200 Pro, we just have like the night sky optimization, which is apparently probably a different thing because it's like called differently. I'm not sure. And yeah, I tried it again with more zoom, 460 millimeter, to see the big difference and the big advantage that the X200 Ultra has in terms of not the focal lengths, but in terms of the larger aperture that gets us a little bit more light. First of all, the color is more right because it's a bit more brighter red that we have instead of the darker red. Otherwise, when we compare the processing here, not much of a difference. It's like a slightly bit more processed again, looking on the Pro model, and a little bit more artificial looking. And yeah, you can clearly see here that this is a bicycle, where here, yeah, could be a person, and there's a 15 and there's some rings there where it's not visible here. So this is the nitpick that I have, where you can clearly see, okay, there is a slight advantage towards the larger aperture that we have, especially at nighttime, visible on the Ultra model in comparison to the Pro model. This is why they changed it. Otherwise, why would they change it if there's no improvement? It's a slight improvement, however, because the processing is so good on both. But I think, yes, if you zoom in so far, the 200 Ultra is a bit better than the Pro model, for sure. Let's take a look at selfies here. It's clear the X200 Ultra is much better than the X200 Pro. I didn't take a selfie at daylight for some reason, but at nighttime it becomes very apparent that the 23 versus 24 millimeter, this sensor has more details there. This is like completely, even though I have like the beautification turned off, it is still very soft and it's like no details at all, where here we have details that we can clearly see. And it's much better. And I'm also not sure why this looks like night and this looks like a few hours earlier, because it's just like too bright in certain areas, and it's a bit overexposed even, I would say, where here my nicer bokeh balls as well. And yeah, maybe the autofocus helps there as well. But the Ultra is winning against the Pro when it comes to night photography for portraits or for front-facing cameras. It's just the better sensor, the better combo, the better focusing here on the X200 Ultra. So it's winning against the X200 Pro. Ranking and conclusion. Yeah, I swapped them. The X200 Pro TLDR 4.572 points and the X200 Ultra 4.765 points. So the clear winner here is the X200 Ultra. Where do we see the big differences? It's not the main camera photo quality, it's almost identical. It's a slightly bit better. I think on the X200 Ultra, the 35mm lens is working a little bit better there than the 24mm or 23mm on the X200 Pro. The ultra wide angle is the big differentiator between those two, because you can clearly see how much better the X200 Ultra is. It's a main camera sensor of the X200 Ultra, where it's definitely a secondary, not even like a third class sensor that we have on the X200 Pro. When it comes to zoom and portrait photo quality, both are doing an excellent job here, and I think both are equally good. Yes, you can see that the X200 Ultra sometimes, especially at night, has a slight edge over the X200 Pro. You can also see that the X200 Pro has way more
processing going on there with AI than the X200 Ultra, especially in the more longer zoom-in range. So that helps the X200 Pro to appear sharper in certain situations like 10x zoom, but as soon as you zoom in a little bit further, then the more natural kind of look on the X200 Ultra is becoming evident, and I like it a little bit more than the X200 Pro. But at one point, of course, both are having this issue that they look very artificial. But it's not enough to differentiate those two. Both are excellent, have excellent sensors there and have excellent glasses in front of them. And this is why they have some good points and negative points, but basically identical. Same goes for the portrait photo quality. There's just the advantage of the X200 Ultra 35 and 50mm looking a little bit crisper than the X200 Pro, but the rest is like basically identical. This is why I'm only giving it 4.9. It's almost perfect on both. Let's say it like this. It's just maybe a tiny little bit more perfect on the X200 Ultra for people who like portraits a little bit more. Video recording quality, I was long debating maybe to give the X200 Pro a little bit more points there, but the front-facing camera is so bad still. It is cropped in way more than on the X200 Ultra, and the stabilization is even worse on the Pro than on the Ultra, and the Ultra is not even fantastic there for that matter. So yeah, I'm sorry, but the X200 Pro is worse than the X100 Ultra for that matter for video recording quality, because it's not as good with the front-facing. Basically, the front-facing camera is not so usable on the Pro model still for some reason. Also, there's some noise creeping in on the X200 Pro. I think even more noise creeping in and more smoothing applied there than what I saw with the 200 Ultra. But the 200 Ultra also has issues like too over-sharp, too over-processed ultra-wide-angle looking most of the time, too much HDR. Reminds me a lot of those newer action cams like the DJI Action 5 Pro or the Insta360 Ace Pro. They also, when they initially came out, had this like over-processed kind of look. Autofocus performance is basically identical. Front camera performance is slightly better on the X200 Ultra. Not at daylight so much, but at nighttime it becomes evident, and the autofocus is helping the X200 Ultra there. Camera UI basically identical. It's just the extra features. We have a little bit more extra features on the X200 Ultra. For example, the flash option for portraits. So it has a special flash that can fire near or far for portrait shoots, which is quite nice, just as one example here that I want to mention. Otherwise, both excellent smartphones, and here you can see the ranking now. The X200 Ultra still on top, #1 rank here with 4.765 points, right above the Oppo Find X8 Ultra. Basically almost identical. It's just like the ultra wide angle is so much better on the X200 Ultra. It's the best ultra wide angle, nearly perfect one, just like the nearly perfect main camera sensor there. That takes it apart from the Oppo Find X8 Ultra. If the Oppo Find X9 Ultra gets a better ultra wide angle, then it would beat the X200 Ultra, because zoom camera photo quality is almost identical there. Video recording quality by default is better on the Find X8 Ultra. A little bit less flexible here and there, but the X200 Ultra has more flexibility with more extra features there, 25 and 50 frames per second recording, for example, and directly lock recording or directly LUT applied recording with the portrait video mode in 4K. We can even turn off the portrait video mode bokeh if you don't like it. So it is sandwiched between the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, is sandwiched between two Vivos, because the Vivo X200 Ultra, previous very long top #1 ranked phone there, is right beneath it. And then we have another Xiaomi 15 Ultra, I think is very good, and the Oppo again. And then we have the Vivo X200 Pro, as you see here, with slightly worse specs, especially the ultra wide angle is the worst amongst them, as you can see here. But the zoom photo quality is amongst the best there. Video recording quality is the weakest because of the front-facing video being so not stable, basically unusable, cropped in, not stabilized, not so very usable. But at least they corrected the color science a little bit. It's not so much mustard kind of face colors anymore. Autofocus performance is amongst the best, as you can see here. It's very good. Front-facing camera is okay, as you see here. It is basically the same as the Find X7 Ultra and almost all of them, besides like the Oppo Find X8 Ultra and the Vivo X200 Ultra. Camera UI is amongst the best there, as well as the extra features that we have here as well. So yes, the Vivo X200 Pro is a very good device, definitely amongst the top 10 of my devices. What do you think about it? Write it down in the comment section. That's it. Until the next time. I have to go down now. My daughter is calling me. Bye.
And of course, I know it is pronounced Wangerland and Herumsiel, if I pronounce it correctly in German, but I wanted to sound a bit more American because so many people running around that I didn't want to expose myself as being German there. Why? Bah! It was a fly. Did I catch that on camera? Hopefully. It just flew directly onto here. Cool, né?